will be moderating this session today. This session is recorded. It will be available on YouTube. It's a live stream. And of course, the Arabic translation is also available. Do not hesitate to drop your question in the box, and I will make sure to read it for our panelists. Today, we're going to talk about Yemen. The situation in Yemen is reaching a pivotal moment, a scorching summer that presents a strategic crossroads, not only for the nation itself, but for the United States, Iran, and the entire region. In this webinar, we'll delve deep into how Yemen's conflict is no longer a contained crisis, but a critical piece in a complex puzzle that involves Gaza, the Red Sea security, but also the evolving situation and relationship between Tehran and Washington. We're privileged to have with us today dear friends and colleagues, three distinguished experts to help us navigate this landscape, starting with the broader regional context before focusing on dynamics within Yemen. First, we have with us Eleonora Ardemani. She is a senior research associate or fellow, at the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, ISPI. We have with us Ahmed Naji. Ahmed Naji is a senior analyst at ICG, International Crisis Group. He is responsible for covering conflict dynamics, politics, security, and the regional role of the country. And finally, we have with us Adel Dusheila. He is a Yemeni researcher and lecturer. His research focuses on post-conflict transitional justice from a social perspective. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you for your time. Without further ado, we're going to start with you, Eleonora. So let's begin with the broader context, right? So considering the ongoing fourth round of nuclear talks between the United States and Iran, how would you assess their effect on the realignment of regional alliances, but of course, vis-a-vis Yemen?
Thank you, Dalia. As for now, I think the nuclear talks are helping to solve a potential problem between the GCC states and the US. Certainly, there isn't a GCC single position on Iran, since the GCC states have nuanced the positions about Tehran, resulting from different threat perception levels and varied economic ties. However, the GCC states are cohesive in rejecting the possibility of airstrikes against Iran nuclear sites by the US, by Israel, or in a joint operation. Since this scenario would generate unpredictable implications for the Gulf and for the security of the GCC states. So until the US and Iran sit for indirect nuclear talks, the military option isn't on the table, at least from the American side. And this is positive for the GCC states. The Qatari government made a very strong point before the talks started, stressing that an attack on Iran nuclear sites would also contaminate, for instance, Gulf water supply. So this would be also an environmental disaster for the region and for the Gulf. Let me remember that Saudi Arabia opted for reestablishing diplomatic relations with Iran in 2023 just to avoid the possibility of a military escalation in the Gulf, in order to secure the Gulf region. For Riyadh, regional stability has really become a mantra, something that can't be neglected due to the primacy of Vision 2030 and of economic goals. And so the escalation with Tehran fits into this picture. The GCC states hope that the US and Iran will find a political compromise on the nuclear issue. At the same time, however, I don't think the monarchies are fully satisfied about ongoing talks. The reason, in my view, is that two prominent security issues are not part of the discussion framework. And I refer to the issue of missile and drone proliferation and the issue of Iranian-backed militias. in the Middle East. And this regards also Yemen and regards the Houthis. For the GCC states, for their security perceptions, these nuclear talks are the same movie of the nuclear talks of 2015, when the GCC states weren't at the diplomatic table, and the issue of missiles and militias weren't addressed during the talks. Therefore, regarding nuclear talks, the US and the GCC states are currently on the same page, aiming at a nuclear deal and so a diplomatic compromise. However, I think that especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE are aware that a nuclear deal alone wouldn't be sufficient to build security in the region and security for the Gulf, since the issue of missile proliferation and militias would not be addressed. As we recently saw with President Trump's visit in the Gulf, the US can provide weapons and training support to the GCC states to improve their defense capabilities. But the Trump administration hasn't been able so far to strengthen Gulf security, nor to restore freedom of navigation, a durable freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. Also because the Houthis' offensive capabilities haven't been significantly degraded by the US operation Rawrider. To conclude, let me say that also the signing of a nuclear deal between the US and Iran could generate unpredictable outcomes in case the Israeli government should decide later to strike Iran nuclear facilities. And this would be something that further deepen the political divide between the GCC states and the current Israeli government. I stop here for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleonora, for this, for giving us the GCC states perspective, on the talks and the reasons for their dissatisfaction with these talks. I'm going to move to Ahmed, and I'm going to ask you, from your experience monitoring mediation efforts, to what extent had the agreement between the Houthi and the US altered the rules of engagement in the Red Sea? Are we witnessing a tactical pause or a strategic one? Ahmed.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I think the ceasefire agreement between the US and the Houthis was somehow a surprise for many observers, because it came at the peak of escalation between the two sides. But to look into what happened before the announcement of the ceasefire, we can understand the dynamics behind the U.S. operations, and as well as the discussions and negotiations that took place in Muscat between the two sides. It was like kind of a secretive talks, but it tells us a lot. First, to give some sort of context for this matter, the Houthis, when they announced their resumption of attacks in the Red Sea early March, they didn't include the U.S. Shipping or the U.S. Warships. That was, the announcement from the Houthis was specifically targeted the Israeli ships, and because of that, and of course the Houthis linked this announcement with the collapse of the ceasefire in Gaza, because they always have this kind of linkage between what's going on in the Red Sea and what's going on in Gaza. In my perspective, the military pressure from the US in mid-March was kind of temporary, because it came without any sort of strategy, and it was kind of a bargaining card, meaning that they wanted to have some sort of arrangements in the Red Sea to protect their shipping. And the best way to do it is to just increase, the pressure on the Houthis. And this is exactly what happened later on when the Houthis started looking for an exit from this kind of exchange of attacks with the U.S. Secondly, the U.S. Sent several messages. First, to the Houthis that we are different from the previous administration. This is Trump administration. We are not going to tolerate with anything that attack our shipping or our interests in the Red Sea, and we will be tough if there is any sort of attacks against us or against our interests. And the other message is to Iran, because it came at the time where Trump administration sent a letter to Iran to put them with some options and some scenarios. If you come to negotiate, we are open to negotiate with you, but if you say no, we are going to escalate. So it was like a model, an example. If you don't positively engage with us, we are going to escalate against you, similar to what we are doing now against the Houthis. And lastly, and which is really important, is that this U.S. operation came with the minimum conditions. It has nothing to do, and this is what the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense mentioned. It has nothing to do with the Yemeni civil war. It has nothing to do with regime change. It was purely about the freedom of aviation from the U.S. perspective. So this kind of minimum conditions was like the entry point for the Omanis to jump in, try to negotiate between the two sides. And the Houthis, at the end of the day, said, but we didn't escalate against the U.S. And we are happy actually to de-escalate if there is like any sort of ceasefire agreement. Now, with the U.S. Houthi ceasefire agreement, both sides felt it's like a win. It's like a win-win agreement. So the U.S. always say, yeah, it's like a victory for us because we pressured the Houthis and we ended up with this ceasefire agreement. And now our shipping are fully protected. And from the Houthi side, they always say this is a victory for us because we managed to neutralize the U.S. and now we are focusing mainly on the Israeli side. But is this the end or is this a tactical step? This is the big question. I think there are lots of challenges, especially if we know that the pressure against the Houthis from the U.S. side is not just the military one. It has also another aspect, which is the economic ones. So lots of like economic sanctions coming from the U.S. against the Houthis. They killed 2 banks in Sana'a just in the past 2 weeks, 2 months, sorry. And there are lots of like, sanctions coming down the line, which is something that could impact the situation in the Houthi controlled areas. And at the end of the day, the Houthis will be cornered and will not be able to maneuver or at least to find some sort of economic resources. So at the end of the day, there will be an escalation for this pressure. And the second thing, we have this kind of exchange of attacks between the Houthis and Israel, and any sort of more escalations incoming. It could expand to the Red Sea, and we can see, the Americans are coming back at any time. And the last point, and I will end here, is we always say, I mean, this kind of ceasefire agreement was a sign of the progress that made between the Iranians and the Americans in this kind of back channel negotiations. But what if we see some sort of collapse in these negotiations or deadlock? Maybe we can see, escalation coming back to Yemen because it's like it's a consequence of any sort of deadlock in this track between the U.S. and the Iranians. So again, there are so many challenges still there, and we cannot say it's something like can be permanent for a long time. It's tactical, and if we don't, expand it, took it from there, and there's no like more diplomatic and political negotiations, things will be coming back to the same escalation.
Thank you, Ahmed. Before going to Adel, let me just push a bit more because you talked about the challenges to this agreement. How sustainable do you think this agreement is? What, in your opinion, would be one or two factors that might, collapse the agreement? Or maybe let's be optimistic and say that might help, sustain and reinforce the agreement. So give us quickly two scenarios.
Yeah, I think it's hard actually to predict scenarios, but let's assume that there will be some sort of diplomatic efforts from the Omanis, from the Saudis, to push for more de-escalation, not just between the U.S. and the Houthis only, but speaking about the Red Sea and what's going on there, perhaps because one of the key issues that we are facing in the Red Sea is the interconnectivity between Gaza war and the Red Sea crisis. So perhaps there will be some sort of progress on Gaza front, where we can see some progress also on the Red Sea front. So in this case, maybe we can see some positive progress in many files where the Houthis could like engage positively with the Saudis, with the Americans, with the Yemenis as well, in order to go back to what's called the political roadmap in Yemen. So this is the best case scenario. But it's unlikely at this moment because, again, from the U.S. perspective, they removed as I mentioned, the military pressure, but the economic pressure is still there. Israel is there, and it's hard actually to convince all parties that let's move to more diplomatic and political track. The other scenario is that maybe we can see more escalation in the coming days, where the Houthis, try to expand, their attacks against Israel. Maybe we can see, more attacks against the Israeli ships, not just in the Red Sea, but also in the Gulf of Eden or the Arabian Sea. And one also element of, the escalation could be inside Yemen. Because again, the Houthis, if they feel that they are cornered and they don't have any economic resources, of course, they will go to the other side of the country, either to Marib or to the western coast, where they can like find some economic, resources, or at least try to pressure the international community that you either find the solution for all of us, meaning the internationally recognized government and the northern areas, or this is a crisis that can be seen in all Yemen. The third scenario, and I will end here, could be like maintaining the status quo, because what we are seeing today is everybody is trying to avoid Yemen. So maybe we can see some countries go to have this kind of bilateral agreements with the Houthis, with other actors, in a way that they protect their interests, but then leave the situation inside Yemen for Yemenis, and they don't care about anything going on inside the country. So perhaps this is, the most likely situation and the most likely scenario in the future.
Thank you, Ahmed. Now I'm going to move to Adel, and thank you, Adel, for being patient. So my question to you is, what are the main challenges facing the internationally recognized government amid the current pace of regional reshaping?
Thank you so much for having me. I think Yemen in general is facing a political and economic crisis. Primarily driven by the absence of a functioning state. The political vacuum has allowed armed groups, especially the Houthis and other groups, to expand their control. So now we can see that Yemen's political geography is fragmented, raising the risk of reshaping the country's political map. In addition to this, the Yemeni political elite has failed to rally around a unified national project to rebuild the state. What we see right now in the areas which are under the control of the legitimate government is a kind of power sharing arrangement. So between some armed groups and political parties. And the situation is complicated. For example, the legitimate government in Aden and BLC and members of parliament and also leaders of the political parties cannot work in Aden, the interim capital of Yemen right now. So most of them live abroad, and that is another main problem. In addition to this, as you know, that Houthis are controlling the northern areas in Yemen. And in these areas, they don't act as a responsible governing like authority. So they present themselves as a resistance movement, avoiding accountability for basic services. In addition to this, we have seen that the legitimate government right now is still struggling to assert control over large parts of the country, with the Houthis dominating the north and the Southern Transitional Council holding the capital of Aden and neighboring governorates. And the parliament cannot meet in Aden, and also the government is unable to export oil due to a Houthi-imposed blockade. And this has created an economic crisis in government-held areas. Moreover, we can see that the government cannot rule these areas well. We have seen that some of the key regional powers or actors like Saudis and United Arab Emirates are shifting their priorities. Right now, they are dealing directly with some groups, with tribal leaders, with some political parties, with some armed groups in these areas, and most of them like non-state actors. And of course, this policy weakens the government. In addition to this, people in these areas don't trust this government, and because for more than 8 years, this government cannot solve the economic crisis and some other humanitarian issues. And the main problem is economic instability in these areas. Right now, for example, the government doesn't have a clear plan to deal with Houthis or with regional powers or with international communities, especially with USA. Right now, we can see some kind of dialogues or negotiations between Houthis and the Saudis, between Houthis and USA. And we have seen also Oman is mediating between Houthis as a non-state actor and these regional and international or global powers. And of course, this makes the government to be unable to deal with regional powers and with international community. Now, if we want to just to address the main problem, what is the main problem? We have non-state actors. Most of these actors are trying to reshape the political geography of the country. Houthis are trying to reshape the geography in North Yemen based on their ideology and project. And also we have seen the Southern Transitional Council is trying to reshape the geography or to establish his own state in southern parts of Yemen. we can see what is happening in Hadramaut. We have seen during the few months ago that Hadrami people are trying to get some kind of self-rule or to an independent state in Hadramaut. So it is very, very complex. What we can do right now, I think the Yemeni government right now and the political elites and parties, they must find a national project, and then they can negotiate with regional powers, with international community. They can say that we have this plan, we want to achieve peace, we want to address the root of the problem, we want to see some kind of security, stability, and peace, and then international community can deal with them. But right now, each one is trying just to work based on his ideology or own project. That is why we cannot achieve peace. Now, for more than 1 decade, Yemenis still fighting each other. I think the problem will not be solved if we couldn't find a national project. Without a national project, maybe we will see some kind of solutions based on the interest of regional powers and international powers. And I think finally, it saddens me to see or to say that the main important issues right now, how can we convince the Southern movement and Houthis to accept the national or a national project? They will not accept. So maybe finally the regional powers and international community, especially the USA, will deal with these non-state actors. And then we can see some kind of reshaping the geography of Yemen. And right now, for example, when you ask the Southern movement, would you like to join the Yemeni government to push Houthis from these northern areas? They say, we have to get some kind of guarantee that after removing Houthis from Sana'a or power, we can get our own state in South Yemen. And also they are trying to work on this project. Right now, the regional powers, especially the Gulf state, unfortunately don't have a clear plan what they can do in Yemen. So we have seen that some of them are supporting Southern movement, some of them are supporting Houthis, some of them are supporting some tribal leaders and religious groups. And right now, you can see in the areas which are under the control of the Yemeni government, we have religious groups like Salafiyat groups. We have another national movement in the western parts of Yemen. We have seen the forces of the Southern movement. We have seen other tribal groups in Hadramaut, in Al-Mahara, in Shabwa. We have seen many security groups, and now also, if you can just look at in Shabwa, they established their own council. In Al-Mahara, they established their own council. In Hadramaut, they established their own council. And all of them are trying to get their own, to implement their own projects. Okay, our government in exile. This government in exile, imagine Trump visited the region and he didn't meet anyone of this government. And I think the Yemeni file right now is not in the hands of these groups or non-state actors. It's in the hands of regional powers and international community. That is the main problem right now. And now what we can say that Houthis are dealing with United States, and Houthis are trying to get some kind of recognition from the USA and from Saudi Arabia. Then they think that they can defeat other local actors, especially in Maghreb and in Ta'az. That is the main problem. Yemenis right now need to address their own problems, and international community and regional powers, if they want to help Yemenis, they must look at Yemenis from the lens of Yemenis themselves, not from the lens of their interest or regional powers. That is the main problem.
Thank you, Adel. So thank you. You walked us very thoroughly through the the challenges that the internationally government is facing, you know, political vacuum. You talked about also the lack of cohesion of the Yemeni elite. And of course, you insisted on the lack of a common national project, which is the main issue there. So before moving to Eleonora, I want to remind the audience that, you know, you can drop your questions in the section, the Q&A section, and there will be time allocated after the third round of question to answer your question. So don't hesitate. So to come back to you, Eleonora, to which extent do you think that the relation between the Houthi and Iran will change?
Thank you, Dalia. Let me add just a couple of words about Yemen, and I agree with Adel. Yemen in 2013, at the end of the National Dialogue Conference, when the outcome document was approved, Yemen is agreed upon the federal principle, a united Yemen with more federal powers for local authorities. But in order to achieve federalism, you need to have a shared single power, a single center of power, a single military. And unfortunately, this is extremely unlikely now. You have now the federalization of Yemen, a bottom-up process in which you have macro powers on the ground, led most of all by armed groups. You can't achieve in this moment a federal perspective, unfortunately. I jump to your question. In my view, Iran will continue to provide weapons and military support to the Houthis, regardless what happens with nuclear talks with the US. But the level of the support, its rhythm, I think it may be no longer so intense and systematic as it has been so far. Mainly due to practical reasons. I try to give you a couple of scenarios. A new nuclear deal would diminish Iran's incentive for constantly arming the Houthis. And most of all, it would increase its political costs. Tehran now stands in a very difficult economic situation. And both the US and Israel current leaderships seem quite keen to reaction in case the Islamic Republic reiterates an ambiguous strategy, talking and at the same time providing weapons to armed actors in the region. This makes for Iran, in my view, the political costs of supporting the Houthis much higher than before. Taking also into account that the Houthis are the most autonomous and also the most unpredictable actor of the so-called axis of resistance. In case the US-Iran talks collapse, I think it's more likely than before that the US and Israel, or both, will strike at Tehran's nuclear sites. And this would highly escalate regional tensions. And in such a scenario, I think that Iran would focus on border defense and on regime security, with decreased possibilities to provide continuous, massive military and intelligence support to the Houthis. So against this area of scenarios, the Houthis now have a stronger interest than before in diversifying their alignments and alliances, as they have started to do since 2024 with the building upon the echo of the attacks in the Red Sea and against Israel. This diversification of alliances is driven by political convenience. regardless ideological differences, the Houthis are trying to partner with actors which share an interest in destabilizing the Red Sea region for their own purposes or against Western powers. We saw this with Al-Shabaab in Somalia, for instance, also with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen, with the prisoner exchange between the Houthis and AQAP, and also with some ceasefire areas between them. Or we saw this with the increased political military contacts between the Houthis and Russia. The Houthis are working, I think, to develop a set of partners to complement Iran and the Axis, not to replace Iran. I would like to be very clear on this point. An area or a set of allies, of contacts in order to complement their main alliance with Iran and the Axis. Since the Houthis' goal is carving out alternative sources and routes for weapon supply, and to a lesser extent also for financial enrichment. I agree with Ahmed that the Houthis need to increase their financial stream, and this mostly came from the Hodeida port and the port infrastructures on the Red Sea, which have been significantly damaged, especially by Israel's strike. And in this way, the Houthis will opt for enlarging, expanding their alliances, but also, I think, to trying to reactivate some front lines in Yemen, maybe along the Marib front. So all the scenarios resulting from Iran-US nuclear talks, of course, with different nuances, would likely make for Iran, in my view, more problematic than currently is to provide continuous massive support of weapons to the Houthis. And for the Houthis, this would mean working to adapt themselves to a changing regional context, a context in which Iran, transnational power and room for maneuver in the region look diminished, at least in the medium term. I stop here.
Thank you, Eleonora. I think the most important grab and go idea, as I like to call them, is that the Houthi are going to try to develop partnerships with other actors, not to replace Iran, but just to make sure that they have alternatives to survive and continue to exist and be relevant. So I'm going to move to Ahmed now and question about mediation. We have seen diplomatic efforts by Oman and other regional actors, countries to de-escalate the Red Sea crisis. In light of the recent US Houthi agreement, how do you, Ahmed, assess the regional role in Yemen in recent months?
Yeah, before answering the question, let me start with just a couple of comments on what have been said by Eleonora and Adil. I think one of the key issues that facing Yemen at this moment is the disintegration of the central government. So this is actually the core problem that has lots of consequences. So that's why we are seeing lots of centers in especially in the areas under the international recognized government. And everybody is looking for their own autonomy, for example. And we know when you have like short wars, and this is what we always say, short wars change regimes, but long and protracted wars change societies. So you have lots of like identities popping up, and everybody is looking for their own, projects, their own political projects, unfortunately. And this is exactly what's happening at this moment in Yemen. The other point I think is when we say there's a war in Yemen, but in fact there's so many wars inside Yemen under this big mess, under this big title. And the question is, and this is what we have been discussing in the past 10 years, there was like a local level, regional level, and of course, the national level. But now we are talking a lot about the international element of this conflict, which is, the U.S., maybe some potential involvement from the global powers. We have Israel on the other side. So this is, I think, another complexity coming to the already complex situation. Any sort of mediation should take into consideration all these kind of complexities. So with the mediation coming from some regional actors like Oman, the main focus was on a specific issue, which is the Red Sea. And we saw them succeeded actually in bringing together the US and the Houthis and agreed on something. But this is not just the first agreement. We saw in 2022, for example, the ceasefire agreement between, or the truce agreement between the Houthis and the Saudi-led coalition was engineered in Oman and Muscat. Later on, the Saudis also developed their own communications with the Houthis, which can take us to so many shifts happening in the region, which is now we are seeing the growing pragmatism in the Gulf countries trying to prioritize diplomatic solutions, because this is not the interest of one country. It's, I think, the interest of all countries. So the zero-sum game solutions that we witnessed in the beginning of the war, or at the beginning of the war in 2015, 2016, is no longer there. So now they are moving to another strategies where they are, trying to prioritize, diplomatic solutions, try to talk to the Iranians. We saw, for example, even before this ceasefire agreement between the US and the Houthis, a visit from the Saudi side to Iran, trying to pressure the Iranians. And we saw the Iranians also play significant role to push the Houthis towards this kind of ceasefire agreement. So this is, I think, some positive steps, and it should be expanded in the coming months. But we also need to take into consideration the concerns among the Gulf countries from what's happening in Gaza, and it's a spillover in the new places. And of course, Yemen is one of them. So they don't want to see more expansion of the conflict. They need to find a solution and even small agreements in the region. And of course, Yemen is a neighboring country, and if there's any escalation in Yemen, that will affect the Gulf countries, especially at this moment. Especially if we know that some of the Gulf countries, specifically Saudi, they have lots of mega projects in the Red Sea. They have their own big events coming down the line. We are talking about, big sports events in Saudi Arabia in the coming years, and they don't want to see more escalation in Yemen. And I think this is a good sign. We need to build on it. We need to revive what was in 2000 or before October 2nd called the political roadmap in Yemen between the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthis. We need to expand it. We need to improve it, because it was somehow bilateral negotiations between the two sides, but we need to make it more comprehensive and more inclusive, because one of the key issues of that mediation is the absence of the PLC, or the internationally recognized government. Of course, there was some talks that they will be added later, but if you are not on the table, you are on the menu. So you need to be there in order to share this kind of inclusive political arrangements. Otherwise, we can put seeds for another round of conflict. So again, the bottom line is that with this shift coming from the regional actors, we need to expand it. We need to put a lot of political capital there, and we need to have an active diplomacy in order to expand it and make it more productive.
Thank you, Ahmed. I'll move to Adel. As Ahmed answered that question about mediation, Adel, for you, as there is these, external dialogues and mediation processes and so on and so forth, do you believe that local decision-making remains effective, or is it now largely subject to regional dynamics?
I don't think that the local actors can achieve some kind of political agreement right now. We have to understand that in Yemen, we have different armed groups, we have different projects, we have different actors. So Houthis right now have their own project in North Yemen, and they want to establish their own state or religious state in these areas based on their ideology. In South Yemen, we have STC, Southern Movement. Also, they want to re-establish their own state in South Yemen. We have also the people in Hadramaut, and they reject to be a member of any central state. And we have other tribal groups. So when you are talking about a national solution, I think it is very difficult right now because all these actors still think of military option, and they can implement their own agenda by force as Houthis. Right now, okay, if we can discuss the problems, what is the position of Abdul Malik al-Houthi in any political agreement right now? We don't know what he wants. And okay, Southern Movement will not accept to implement the outcomes of the National Dialogue Conference 2013-2014. They will not accept the international or the Security Council Resolution 2216. And in Hadramaut, they will not accept. So it's very important. It is very difficult. What can I say? The political parties, especially Islah Party and the former regime's party, Congress Party, and other religious tribal leaders can be unified, and they can establish their own project. And that project, because they have some forces on the ground, and then they can present this project to the regional powers, especially Saudis and United Arab Emirates, and to the global powers, especially the USA. And then if they have a clear plan and they can present it, international community will listen to them. But if they don't have a national plan or a common national project, then no one can listen to them. So right now, for example, the leader of the BLC in Moscow, okay, he doesn't have militants on the ground. So what? A few months ago, they Russia met Houthis and Southern Movement and Tariq Saleh and other groups. Right now, okay, what he can do? Nothing, because he doesn't have power to say that I can secure the interest of the international community, especially Russia, USA, UK, and regional powers. Right now, I think the Gulf states can help Yemen. If they want to see a unified Yemen, they can support Yemenis to create some kind of a national project. Without support of the regional powers, I think that we cannot implement some kind of power sharing or agreement or political agreement or a lasting peace. Saudis right now say that Yemenis must decide their own future, and we will support them. Other Gulf state members say like this: Yemenis must decide their own future. Okay, how can we decide, or how can we build our own future? And we have many non-state actors inside Yemen, and all these actors are receiving support from regional powers. When you look at Houthis, Iran is supporting them. When you look at Southern Movement, United Arab Emirates is supporting them. When you look at the people in Hadramaut, Saudis is supporting them. When you look at the people in Al-Mahara, Oman is supporting them. So we have many non-state actors. Right now, you cannot build a national project, but I can, once again, it saddens me to say that if the Yemeni political parties cannot create a common national project, one day Yemenis can, or the Yemeni people can see a solution that imposed by the regional powers and international community. In this case, we cannot see a unified Yemen. We can see some kind of new states. We can see that maybe the geography of Yemen will be divided not only into states, maybe on 3 states, because regional powers don't take care of our needs or what the Yemeni want. And they don't look at us from our lens. They look at Yemen just from the lens of security and their interest. Even though international community, few months ago, USA mentioned that we don't take care of the civil war in Yemen. Just we are taking care of Bab el-Mandeb. Just we are looking at Yemen from the lens of security. Even though regional powers right now, for example, Saudis are supporting tribal leaders and other religious groups. They are trying just to serve their own national security.
Of course, Adel, but let me ask you something, because you describe a very complex political situation where there are several crises, multi-level crises, several actors trying to reshape the political geography of the country. And you talk about a national project. Very quickly, in 3 minutes, how would this national project look like? What would it look like exactly? Do you have an idea about
yes, I have
Please.
an idea. We have the outcomes of the Yemeni National Dialogue Conference. We have right now, we have Yemeni institutions. And I think that all the political parties and religious groups and tribal leaders and all civil societies like groups, they can just write their own plan and they can present it to the regional powers and international community, and they can say that is our own national project and try to support us, and we can secure your interest, and we are ready to participate in securing the Red Sea and regional powers interest in our country Yemen if they have a national a national project, and then regional powers, including Gulf states and USA, will listen to us. Without this, I think that no one will listen to Yemenis. That's all.
Absolutely, I think everybody agrees. So before opening the floor to the audience, because I still want to give them 15 minutes of questions, I have one question for all of you, the same question, and you have 2 minutes each to answer it. The title of this webinar, that was, by the way, the idea of the junior fellow of the Conflict and Security Program, Fawzi Goidi. So I thank him for this. I chose the title though. It's called Yemen Scorching Summer. So coming back to this title, I want you in 2 minutes to give me what scenario do you foresee for Yemen in the summer of 2025? Do you see a military escalation or a conditional path to de-escalation? Eleonora, you go first, please.
Well, about the Houthi-Israel confrontation, I don't think the Houthis will stop launching missiles and drones against Israel. But at the same time, I don't see the Houthi-Israel confrontation expanding into some sort of broader conflict. For the Houthis, targeting Israel is part of their ideology. It's also a powerful mobilization and recruitment tool. Especially now they reached a compromise, a fragile ceasefire with the US. Don't forget that the fight against Israel and the Jews is part of the Houthi slogan since the beginning, as well as the fight against America. Despite their ideological positions, however, the Houthis accepted a tactical pause. I agree with the definition that Ahmed suggested about this tactical pause between the Houthis and the US. They accepted this pause, and this also sheds light on their pragmatic phase, not only their ideological phase, but also their pragmatic phase, and their adaptability in shifting context. And this is something they already displayed at least since the Sada Wars, since 2004, fighting the army, fighting Ali Abdullah Saleh, then joining an informal alliance with Ali Abdullah Saleh, and so on. I stop here.
Yeah, I think, yes, thank you, Eleonora. I think from my side, we can see more escalation between Israel and the Houthis. The exchange of attacks will continue. I think also we can see more economic pressure from the US, and the US could like escalate this line of pressure against the Houthis, and it's a kind of economic war. So instead of using tanks, they are using banks. So this is something we are expecting in the coming months or in summer, as you mentioned. And we can see more building up inside the country, especially in the different front lines in Marib, Al-Dala, and Shabwa, perhaps the coastal areas as well. Because if we know that the Houthis in the past 2 years, they managed to recruit more than 300,000. They are talking about, more than this number of fighters. Of course, they are not going to fight in the Red Sea, but they will fight inside the country. So at the end of the day, if you have like large number of fighters, you need to have a battle. So maybe there will be something inside the country. The worst part will be the humanitarian situation inside Yemen. There will be like an abandoned situation, no more funding coming to Yemen, lots of economic pressure, lots of sanctions. So the humanitarian situation will be even worse.
Thank you so much. I can mention that military option on the table locally and peaceful option, but we have to know that right now there is there is an attempt of negotiation between Houthis and Saudis and Oman. Also, there are some attempts like to create some kind of negotiation between Southern Movement and the Yemeni government, which is like a transitional council, is a part of this government. And I think it's very difficult right now to implement a political agreement based on the situations. Second scenario, if we look at the military option, I think regional powers don't want to see or to participate in any escalation or any military campaign against Houthis. What we will see, I think that maybe regional powers and international community in general will try to create some kind of balance, and maybe we will see some kind of negotiation between these non-state actors and regional powers at what had happened in Afghanistan and other areas or Somalia. I don't know what will happen in the future, but of course, it is very difficult to implement a political agreement right now.
Thank you. Thank you all for this. Now we're going to open the floor to the questions. And I have a few already in front of me that were sent by participants before the session. So I'm going to start with the first question that goes, would the formal separation of the South facilitate a solution to the Yemeni crisis? I'm going to give the floor to Ahmed for this, but don't hesitate to jump if you want, but let's start with Ahmed on this one.
Sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Yes, sure. So it says, would the formal separation of the South facilitate a solution to the Yemeni crisis? Sorry, Ahmed, I put you on spot.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's hard actually to go to the previous initiatives and try to like work on them as like an answer for the current situation, because this is one of the main manifestations of the Yemeni crisis, which is by time pass we always see more complexities. So, for example, Adel mentioned the National Dialogue Conference outcomes, which is something, everybody is talking about. They are perfect in terms of, talking about all elements of what should be done. But when you speak with the Houthis, they say always, yeah, but we were like a small group. Now we are controlling like all the north side of the country. So 65% of the population under the control. And if you speak with the STC, they always say, but we were not a part of that conference. How should we adopt that? So I think what is needed is, benefit from previous initiatives, previous agreements, previous, outcomes coming from different dialogues in the past. But we need to add something could answer to the current situation and to the current complexities in the country. So by doing so, we can find something tangible. And the last point is that what is needed now, and was a part of a political roadmap that brokered by the Omanis and later on the UN Special Envoy, is to have the Yemeni talks. So we need to bring the Yemenis together to talk like in openness about their interests, their ambitions, their political visions about the future, and based on that like talks, we can come up with a proper solution.
Thank you, Ahmed, for this. I'm going to ask all of you another question, and please, whoever feel comfortable answering it, step in. So the question is a bit long, so it goes, please comment on the recent new alliance between Russia and Iran as it relates to maintaining military supply, fossil material, and currency trading, all in violation of sanctions. Do you believe in upholding sanctions and enforcing violation of agreements?
I would like Dalia to add something on the previous question in the meantime.
Of course.
Well, I don't think that the partition, so coming back to 1990 boundaries of Yemen, could be a solution now. Since there are too many divisions, too many rivalries also within the South in terms of local identities and agendas, in terms of rivalries for economic resources, and also competition connected to the external backing of forces that are currently in control of parts of the South. Just one example, Hadramaut, it was already mentioned. In the south, in the coastal area of Hadramaut, Mukella, you have the Southern Transitional Council, the Hadrami elite forces that are trying to consolidate their control on the coast, which are Emirati-backed. And you have the rising influence in Hadramaut of Saudi Arabia in latest years, with Riyadh, which is trying to support especially tribes in the area of the north of Hadramaut, Wadi Hadramaut, especially Ahmed bin Abrish, and the forces and the so-called Hadramaut protection forces, which are asking for more resources and more oil revenues staying in Hadramaut. So I don't think the partition would be a feasible solution. And with regard to the strategic partnership between Iran and Russia that was agreed at the start of the year 2025, I don't think this strategic agreement is having significant implications for Yemen as so far. I think that certainly the fact that the Iranians have strengthened their relations and their partnership with Russia opens collaboration possibilities also to the Houthis. There were media reports about talks between the Houthis and Russia, for instance, about anti-ship missiles a few months ago. But I don't think the Iran-Russia strategic partnership can be a game changer for Yemen and for the Houthis. My view is that the Houthis will try to play also the Russian card among other possible cards in order to expand their web, their network of alliances which are complementary to Iran.
Thank you, Eleonora, for this. I'll move to Khaled. Maybe you want to take this one. What are the long-term implications of the Red Sea crisis on the GCC maritime security? Adel, do you want to take this one?
When you look at the security aspect, of course, GCC members look at Yemen from the lens of security. And we have that because of Bab el-Mandab. During the last few months, when there was some kind of conflict between US and Houthis, Saudis didn't participate in that coalition, and they said that we are neutral because we don't want to be a member of any conflict right now. We have to solve the conflict with Houthis by a negotiation. I think it's very, very important for all the Gulf states to secure Bab el-Mandab, the Red Sea, and Gulf of Aden, and Indian Ocean. But without solving the problems in Yemen, I think the security threat will be there. Right now, if we just look at the conflict from the lens of security, okay, international community, regional powers look at Yemen from the lens of security. And okay, if they right now, there is some kind of like truce or like ceasefire between US and Houthis. Just Houthis will not attack the ships or like this. Okay, what about other problems? What about social problems? What about internal problems, political problems, economic problems? All of these issues are behind the door. So Gulf state, I think that must do something for Yemen, because Yemen is very a strategic area, not only for international powers, but also for regional powers, especially for Oman and Saudi Arabia. And these two countries, Oman and Saudi Arabia, can help Yemenis to solve their own problems. As Ahmed mentioned that in his answer, I really can say that right now, we Yemenis are unable to solve our problems because we cannot convince Transitional Council to come and to address our problems, and we can re-establish our state, and we can create some kind of like decentralized state, and then like local governance, and then we can move to the second step to achieve maybe federalism or something like that. No one will accept. So first of all, we have to cut support of these non-state actors, to impose some kind of sanctions against them, and then they will come to table and we can address our own problems. If we still just look at Yemen from the lens of security, we will see a lot of problems, not only in the field of security, but in the field of everything. That's all.
Thank you. Because we are short on time, I think we have one time for maybe one more question. I think the most important one that is here is, and I think I asked you, Adel, about it, but maybe Ahmed want to jump in because he nods and he seemed to agree. Very quickly, Ahmed, because Adel answered what a national project would look like in Yemen. Do you have any idea on this that you would like to share in a minute or two?
I have some comments. For example, very quickly, when it comes to Russia, there are lots of rumors about Russian involvement in Yemen, maybe collaboration with the Houthis. But we need to take into consideration one element, which is the Russian Gulf relations. This is something important for Russia, and they don't want to intervene, to engage with the Houthis to the point where they see the Gulf countries that not satisfied about this relation. So they always prioritize the relations with the Gulf over their relations with the Houthis. This is number one. When it comes to the role of the GCC in Yemen, I'm happy there's like a big shift towards more soft strategy towards the country. But the problem now, we don't want to see this kind of disengagement. We need, of course, at the end of the day, the resolving the problems inside Yemen, the conflict inside Yemen is the responsibility of Yemenis, not the others. But we always say the Gulf countries can help by investing in the local pocket of stability, by expanding the economic opportunities inside Yemen. We know lots of like border agreements between Yemen and Oman, between Yemen and the Saudis, include a lots of like markets, joint economic districts close the borderlands. So maybe thinking about finding some economic opportunities could help. The last point related to your question, I think it's not me who can tell what is the national project, but we need Yemenis to sit together and discuss, their like political differences. If they do so, they will come up with the national project or what should be done in the future and decide about the, state building forms in the coming years. Otherwise, we will be lost by like different interpretation of what is, the ideal national project should be look like.
Thank you, Ahmed, for this. Thank you, Adel. Thank you, Eleonora. I think I have 3 grab and goes idea here that I really liked. The first one would be the issues need to be looked at in Yemen, not only from a security lens. That's very important. The second one is that Yemen needs a national project. You all agreed on that. What it looked like, that's another question. And the third grab and go idea is about ownership. You all agreed that Yemeni needs to solve their own issues. So I want to thank you all, Adel Dushaila, Ahmed Naji, Eleonora Ardemani, for joining us, for taking the time. I want to thank all the people also who joined us. And before leaving, I want to remind you to log in the Middle East Council website. Whoever is interested in Yemen, there is an amazing issue brief written by Fawzi El Goidi and Dr. Ahmed Morsi entitled The Wages of War, Yemeni Gunman for Hire. I repeat, The Wages of War, Yemeni Gunman for Hire. It is worth reading, so please read it. Thank you again. And